Well, it's 12 o'clock. Let's call the meeting to order here. I'm Ken Hannon. I'm the current president of the Dunedin Council of Organizations. Glad everyone is here today. I think we're gonna learn a lot. I think it's a topic that is timely and has lots of room for us all gaining insights. So I'm looking forward to that. But before we get there, if Pastor David Sheeler from the First Presbyterian Church of Dunedin could lead us in an invocation. We'll
Absolutely, Ken. Absolutely, Ken, and I would be glad to. I do want to note, unfortunately, I'll have to leave in just a few minutes to move on to another meeting. So, Dr. Pierre, I'm sorry that I won't be able to hear your presentation. I think it's important and timely. So, thank you for being with us. But if you would, let's pray together. Holy God, it is good that we are together. We have been missing one another, separated as we are during this pandemic. While we certainly pray for healing for those who are ill, comfort for those who are grieving loss, gratitude for those who serve on the front lines, and peace to all who are anxious and alone, we're also grateful for this opportunity just to be together, to be connected, even electronically today. And yet, while we're connected today, we confess that we're also far from united. Especially in this hard-fought election season, we admit that nationally and locally, we are divided. And we confess that when we are so divided, we are not at our best, that we have let our divisions get the better of us. Rather than valuing what we hold in common, we often look for what keeps us apart. We create competing camps of us versus them, and we will do whatever it takes to win. Cherry pick facts, repeat downright lies as long as they support our side. We'll betray colleagues and vilify opponents. We'll brush aside fairness and circumvent justice. We'll deny our own mistakes and fail to see your divine image in others. So Lord, forgive our pettiness. Forgive our willingness to win at all costs. You've been clear that we pursue these paths to our own collective peril. They will kill us if we don't stop. But empower us instead. Empower us instead to honestly accept our differences, but also to work for our common good, so that we may join you in your work to build your beloved community. And may these brief moments that we have today as we discuss our diversity, may these moments not only connect us across the internet, but be a step in your direction. And in your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, David. Some thoughtful words for us all, for sure. I am thrilled that we have here today with us for our meeting, Dr. Devona Pierre. Dr. Pierre is the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Director at St. Petersburg College. She completed her graduate studies at Dillard University and earned her master's in adult education and doctorate in higher education administration from Auburn University. She has more than 10 years of experience helping organizations transform their equity, diversity, and inclusion goals. She is recognized subject matter resource for developing and implementing frameworks that meaningfully collect equity, diversity, and inclusion efforts with various areas of organizational functioning, which are certainly an important area for all of us here as we all bring our Dunedin Council of Organizations to bear and look forward to having Dr. Pierre share some insights with us. Dr. Pierre.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you so much for having me. I want to say thank you to Ken for having me, and thank you so much to Dina for inviting me. I'm extremely excited to talk to you a little bit about the diversity of Pinellas County. Hopefully we can talk about the diversity of Dunedin and then talk about some diversity trends. I look forward to answering your questions If you could please put those in the chat box. I'll ask Ken. I'm not necessarily sure if Ken would be the right person, but if someone could just, and you can insert the questions, you can unmute yourself and let me know, Ken or designee, what the questions are. And I will definitely attempt to answer those. Again, my name is Devona Pierre. I am so excited to be with you to talk about diversity trends. And so I want to start by sharing my screen. I want to share a couple of statistics, and this is information that has been gathered by the census. And hopefully everyone took time to complete their census as they were due yesterday. And so I want to talk just a little bit about Pinellas County. Obviously, Pinellas County is the county in which Dunedin sits. We will definitely have a conversation about Dunedin and Dunedin's diversity. Those graphs are a little bit more difficult to see, but we will do our best, and I'll make sure that I share this information with you, Ken, and your group so that you can send it out to everyone. Will that work? Okay. So in Pinellas County, this information is as accurate as we have to date 2018 information. It can be found on datausa.io. And according to the Census Bureau and the information from the Census Bureau, we have just under 1 million individuals within the county, right? And so I took the information here to break down what we look like as it relates to race and ethnicity. And one of the things that you can see is as it relates to white, those that categorize themselves as white non-Hispanic, we have about 74% individuals. Now, just so you know, I will send you this website. I will send you this presentation so you don't have to jot all of this information down. I know you guys are taking copious notes, but don't feel the need to write everything down as this is an interactive website. So in the county, we have about 74% white non-Hispanic, and I'll talk about non-Hispanic and then white Hispanic, right? And then we have about 10%, 9.88% Black or African-American non-Hispanic. Asian is 3.33%. And then there's the category multiracial non-Hispanic. I wanna stop on this and talk about this a little bit. In 2010, the Census Bureau finally created a new category, right? The census is now taking racial information, multiracial, 2 or more races. And so that's very significant when we look at our demographics, because one of the trends, and I will say this prior to going into the trends, one of the trends we will see is more individuals identifying as multiracial, right? And as individuals identify as multiracial, of course, there are other areas that will then start to shrink as people start identifying as multiracial. So the multiracial non-Hispanic category is about 2.7%, which is a small percent now, but I believe that when we look at the most current information, when the new census information is released, we will definitely have an uptick now that individuals are allowed to share. And prior to 2010, individuals were not allowed to share. You were either or, and you had to select, okay? And then I talked about white non-Hispanic, so I'm gonna talk a little bit about white Hispanic. That population identifies as around about 7.5%. So we're looking at about 73,000 individuals that are white, that identify as white non-Hispanic. Other Hispanic, 1.34%, and multiracial Hispanic, a little less than 1%. And so that's very, very telling because again, multiracial Hispanic versus multiracial non-Hispanic are those categories that we will in time begin to see swell. And as we see those swell, we will see a decrease in other categories. So I'm going to go down to English and non-English speakers. So we have about 6%, 6.5% of our population in Pinellas County that speaks Spanish, less than 1% that speaks Greek, about 0.63%, and about 0.61%, so a little less than 1% that speak Vietnamese, right? And so that's important when we think about the individuals that are in our county, what language, that they're speaking, etc. And so when we look at age, and I won't dig too deep into this, but we realize that we in Pinellas County, especially in the state of Florida, compared to other states, it's multi-generational. We're talking about a number of different age ranges, a number of different age groups. I will talk about that a little bit later, but this is kind of a graph so that you can see what we look like as far as age is concerned in the county. Unfortunately, as it relates to global diversity, we're not able to break it down by state. So the information, global diversity is broken down by the state of Florida. And so Cubans are our #1 global diverse category, followed by Haitian and followed by Colombia. And this is all in the state of Florida. And I would surmise that that is typically in the lower part, the more southern part of the state, a little south of us, okay? I'm very happy about the fact that they break down military veterans. And so when we look at our county compared to the United States, we have a phenomenal representation from World War I, Korea, and Vietnam, superseding the percentages of the United States. And then the Gulf War in the 90s and the Gulf War in the early 2000s, we have a hefty representation, not necessarily superseding the representation throughout the United States. So very happy that they capture this information. In addition to, and while diversity encompasses a number of different things, right? Diversity encompasses race, ethnicity, religion, age, gender. Another thing I thought was extremely important for us to just take a look at is the median household income, and for us to take that into consideration. And so when we look at the county, this is where we lie. And this is the representation of the United States. Here are some of our neighboring, well, that's the state of Florida. Here's Pinellas, Tampa, St. Pete. And can I get to Pasco County? And so we see that we definitely have a little bit more work to do in our median household income. But, we are definitely working on that, okay? And so I will stop here with the data charts and the data graphs that we have, and I'll make sure to send this information so that you can do a deep dive and kind of look at our wages based upon race and ethnicity, as well as distribution, the wage distribution. And so now I really want to talk about some diversity trends, right? So I will talk about some diversity trends that we'll be able to see. Let me see, do I have enough time? I think I have enough time. Can you have to keep me honest with time because I'm a talker. And so I want to make sure.
Go for it.
Okay, let me share my screen again. This may be a little bit more difficult to see, and I apologize. And so when we look at Dunedin, can you all see that, Ken? Is that Can you see it? Okay. When we look at Dunedin, and we're looking at race and ethnicity, this is kind of how we compare. It's a little bit difficult. When we look at the state of Florida is about 44.4% non-white. When we look at Pinellas County, it's about 24.7%. And then we look at Dunedin, it's about 15.5%. Okay. And that encompasses Hispanic, Black, Asian, as well as other. Okay. And so that's what Dunedin looks like from a non-white race ethnicity population. Okay. These are a little bit more difficult to see, and it's breaking down the Tampa Bay area, which is not necessarily, I mean, it's an interesting thing to have, but not necessarily what you want to see. You want to see your area specifically. So when we talk about race and ethnicity, that's especially what we're talking about. So let's move on to some of the trends, some of the diversity trends, and hopefully this will show up for me. I have a number of different things, and I'm pretty sure that there may be some questions, and I look forward to talking about that and answering those questions and sharing this information with you. Let me share my screen again. Yes, it is, Dina. It is a very interesting image. Okay, so let's talk about diversity trends. All right, here we go. So when we talk about diversity, realize that I'm talking about a number of different things, from race and ethnicity, from gender, from religion, and I'll re-emphasize that. But some of the things that we talk about when we talk about diversity and diversity trends is this inclusion of equity, right? And so before, diversity was diversity and inclusion, and it was just diversity and inclusion. And so now some of the trends lean to equity and really looking at equitable practices and what equity looks like from a larger scale. And when I'm talking about equity, I'm talking about ensuring that, for instance, that there's equitable representation in hiring, that there's equitable representation amongst women leadership, etc. So there's been this big push to ensure that we have equity, not just diversity, right? Because diversity and inclusion is great, but it's more so about parity and about equity. And then we have this multi-generational focus. We have about, and I'm looking at my notes, we have about 5 or so generations that we're looking at in our county now. And so when we think about those 5 generations, we're looking at a number of different age ranges, a number of different learning styles, and different needs. And so when I say multi-generational, I mean from the Twitterverse, I mean, from Facebook, Zoom, and all of those different things. And really how we process information, how we receive information, and how we process those things, and how we reach certain individuals. And so, Ken, I think that that's very important when we talk about diversifying and making sure that we have individuals of varying age ranges and varying backgrounds, because we're going to get a number of individuals that may not necessarily be a part of the Twitter generation. But if we want to reach those individuals, we definitely have to employ some strategies that they are accustomed to receiving, right? So that's definitely something that we need to be mindful of. And then bias. And so there's this term called unconscious bias. And so we think about it a lot in the workforce, in higher ed, and maybe not necessarily as much as we should, but we can focus, or we should focus a little bit more on bias and how to address those biases. And I'll talk about social justice a little bit later, but there's a such thing as an unconscious bias, and there are ways in which we can tap into those biases and be able to kind of self-correct those things. And so those are things that we definitely need to think about when we think about diversity, equity, and inclusion, to ensure that we are open to all groups. I am grateful and very appreciative. And let me give you an example, and this is not a critique, Ken, but I want to make sure that I give you an example. We just had a prayer, right? We had a prayer. And so my question is, for those that are non-believers or that are not Baptists, how are they being included in this group? And are they being included in this group and welcomed in this group, right? Normally when I give, and let me give you another example. Normally when I give these sorts of talks, I normally have a recognition of tribal nations and those types of things. And so making sure that I acknowledge that the land on which we sit is not, was not necessarily our land to begin with, right? But then I also talk about the individuals that came to this land, not of their own free will, right? Some of my ancestors. And then other things that I make sure that I include is introducing myself as Devona with pronouns she, her, hers. So making sure that we are inclusive, and this goes into gender identity expression in the LGBT plus community, making sure that this is a space where individuals are open to be exactly who they are. And so I'll go into gender identity and supporting gender identity expression in the LGBTQ plus community. We have definitely seen in Pinellas County, as well as nationally and globally, the thought process that individuals are able to express who they are and bring their whole selves to whatever space in which they're in. And so making sure that we recognize and identify that even though I may present as a she, I may not necessarily identify as a she, and my pronouns I may be non-binary. I may identify as a he, but I may also identify as a they. And so ensuring that gender identity expression and the LGBT community is a part of what we do in allowing individuals to bring their full selves to our organizations is extremely important. We will definitely see an increase in that. We've seen an increase in the past years, but we will definitely see an increase in coming years. But also intersectionality. And so when I talk about intersectionality, I'm not just a woman, right? I'm a woman that identifies as being Black. And I'm a woman that identifies as being Black who is an ally and an advocate for the LGBT community. And so intersectionality is something that when I bring this forth, what I'm talking about with intersectionality is how we bring our diverse and our multiple diverse selves to the table. I am not a veteran, but we have to think about what everyone is bringing to the table. Ken, you're a male, you identify or you present as a male that identifies as being white, but you may also be a veteran. And making sure that we're cognizant that people are complex. We are complex as individuals, and bringing those things forward and making sure that we acknowledge those things, making sure that we acknowledge our Muslim brothers and sisters, our Greek Orthodox brothers and sisters, and non-binary individuals, our Catholic brothers and sisters. And so realizing that when people come to us, they are a number of different things. They identify as a number of different things, and being able to acknowledge the complexity of who we are. And then also class. Obviously, class is an issue that we've had to contend with for a very long time. But there are definitely some things that some gaps in class. There are some things that we're dealing with the middle class, with the lower class and upper class, and those gaps are starting to, the holes in between those are starting to increase. And so being mindful of class and what those things look like, that's definitely a trend that we're going to see an uptick. And then social justice emphasis, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen and talk to you all about social justice and some of the things related to social justice. When we talk about social justice, we are talking about some of the things that are happening. I know it may be uncomfortable for some individuals to talk about Black Lives Matter, to talk about the Me Too movement, but these are things that are present and evident in our society. And when we talk about the ways in which we engage our citizens and the way in which we engage, for instance, individuals that are police officers, we have to be mindful of the things that are going on around us. We cannot bury our heads in the sand. And so when we talk about social justice issues, we have to be cognizant of that and what's going on, not just in Pinellas County, in Tampa Bay, the state of Florida, but around us, because before you know it, these sorts of things will be brought to our front door. We will be confronted with these things. And so we definitely have to be mindful and paying attention to what's happening around us, paying attention to the Black Lives Matter movement, paying attention to the Me Too movement, paying attention to harassment, paying attention to police brutality, paying attention to those types of things, because if we don't, regardless of your feelings about them, right, they are evident in our society and things that's going on. And we need to make sure that we're cognizant of these things, we're paying attention to these things, and that we're mindful that it can happen and it will happen in our area. And we need to be able to address those things and not bury our head in the sand, because before we know it, something could definitely happen in our area, and we have to be mindful of that. I see a couple of questions. How should an organization, what should an organization do to ensure that their membership and leadership is inclusive of all races, particularly in community like Dunedin, which is 85% white? Thank you so much, Rebecca, for that question. One of the things that I will say is being mindful, first of all, of who you are as a region and area is very much so important, because now that you know who you are, you're able to then go into those communities and say, we are the Dunedin Council of Communities, and we want to ensure that we're inclusive to your community. So I want to make sure that you reach out to that community. You find that in to that community, whether it be a religious organization, whether it be going to the community and inviting individuals into your organization, and make sure that we're not necessarily just talking about race. Let's talk about age. Let's talk about including individuals of varying ages. And let's talk about some of those diverse categories that we looked at a little bit earlier. and making sure that we reach out to them. Figure out where they are and go there. If they're on Twitter, go to Twitter. If they're on Facebook, go to Facebook. Create a Facebook presence, create a Twitter presence. Go to the neighborhoods in which you can see on the statistical atlas. I'm going to send you information. It will break down for you, and let me see if I can do this. It will break down for you where individuals live based upon their race, right? So let me share this with you really quickly. And hopefully you're able to see this. But it will break down for you where the white population lives, where the Hispanic population lives. This is where the Hispanic population lives, right? Go there. Go to that community. Let's see, Black. These are the most populous areas where the Black population live. 12.44%, 13.52%, 11%. Asian, right? So when you look at this map, mixed, right, and other, I would definitely, and again, I will send you this information, the website, so that you'll be able to do a deeper dive. But go there, right? Go there, talk to the residents, talk to the individuals in those communities, meet individuals where they are. And again, and I'm talking about Twitter and Facebook and all those wonderful things. We have another question. Do you see companies asking interview questions that deal with diversity, equity, and inclusion? Yes, I do. And not necessarily just talking about equity, diversity, and inclusion and asking them those sorts of things, but I definitely see a focus, not necessarily just on interview questions, but also making sure that they are advertising their positions in areas that are diverse, that are inclusive, to ensure that we have equity, making sure that we're going to communities. And I will say that at St. Pete College, we're definitely going in that direction to ensure that we are advertising, that we're advertising in communities that are diverse. And we're definitely getting there. Second question from Phyllis. Thank you for this question, Phyllis, or these couple of questions. How do you recommend boards, organizations, companies to set value statements and key priorities related to diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility? Thank you for including accessibility, because that's often an area that is overlooked. To be perfectly honest with you, Phyllis, I believe that that's something that should be done with a diversity professional, with the help of a diversity professional. Because and no offense, Phyllis, no offense, Ken, no offense to the organization, but if the same individuals that are a part of the organization is trying to identify value statements that are inclusive and diverse and accessible, and you're not inclusive, diverse, and accessible, then that's going to create a problem. And so my thought process is that you look into diversity consultants, you consider hiring a diversity consultant, and I can definitely provide some names for that, and not to plug myself. I can, be that individual, but I definitely have some individuals. I'm not sure if, Ken, are you familiar with GABE? I think it's GABE, or there's an organization for government, and I know you're not a government organization, but a government and community type of organization that looks at diversity and inclusion. I'll send you that information. Let me just write that down. And they have, okay, send info. They have that, some of those types of things that you can look at as an organization, especially community. I think it's GABE. I'll have to look at that. I have that saved somewhere. Thank you, Rebecca. I'm glad. But I think that if you are serious about looking at a value statement, creating a diversity statement, there's work to be done. And it's not necessarily going to be, oh, let's have a 1 hour meeting, check the box. There's some serious things that need to be done. You need to look at your organization as a whole. You need to look at your mission statement, your priorities, all of those types of things. Because when you look at a diversity statement means nothing if the organization isn't bought into that, and if it has no teeth, if it isn't aligned with your mission, vision, and value, right? $1 million question. How do you attract diverse employees to your organization? Oh, Phyllis. Oh, and I thought this was going to be a 20 to 30 minute conversation. It's not that easy, Phyllis. There are a number of different ways to do so. Okay. Phyllis, can you tell me what type of organization you work for, what organization you're speaking of, please? Go ahead.
Good, I've been unmuted. Thank you. I'm the library director for the city of Dunedin. So obviously I'm under the umbrella of our city. But you know, in the library world, I know our American Library Association, our Florida Library Association, we're doing a really big push for diversity in the workforce. You know, obviously historically, it's a very heavy female profession. And, you know, being in Dunedin, you know, our staff is mainly white. We have some Hispanic. So just kind of, how do you get people, you know, to come to Dunedin? We've got a great culture here. We're very accepting. We're very welcoming. I think we've got a great staff and you know, but I would love for more diversity among our staff. We do have some LGBTQ IA. So we have a gambit of everything. I think one of our big things is accessibility. We want our building to be accessible. Everything is, we've done a really great job with that. But as I said, I'd love some more diversity. Our ages are kind of changing. That's another thing. We've got some younger staff, and as you mentioned, multiple generations. So that's exciting because that's helping us all change. But I've just seen nationwide libraries just being more about how can we mentor and encourage younger, diverse people to come into the profession.
So thank you for the question, Phyllis. One of the things I will say is you mentioned mentoring, right? And so one of the things that I talk about a great deal, I'm an educator by trade. My area is higher ed administration. Okay, so I'm in education. One of the things that we lack is diversity in education, in the sense that there are very few men that are teachers, especially in K-12. And we are seeing strides, but most of the workforce in K-12 in the country are white women. And so the way, you know, it's kind of difficult to turn a ship quickly, you know, but there's definitely some things that we have to do in order to move that forward. This is not a conversation that I can have with you in, you know, a question that I can answer very quickly. But I will say this, look at your website, look at your position announcements, look at who you're mentoring, right? What type, and I hate to plug my organization, but I will. What type of partnerships do you have with St. Pete College, for example? And what type of partnerships do you have throughout the community? Because if you can get into those communities, and it might not necessarily be in Dunedin, it might be in St. Pete, It might be in Clearwater. You will possibly have to go outside a little bit further into the county in order to be able to tap into some of that diversity. But it is all about, you tapped on mentorship. It is all about mentorship. What are you doing? What are you doing for high school students? What are you doing for middle school students? What are you doing for elementary? And I know that that's a lot, but we have to think a little bit more strategic when we're talking about diversifying, because if we keep doing those same things, we're going to keep getting the same results. So I would say, look at your partnerships, right? And that goes to high schools, because you need to talk to those high school students about careers in careers in the library, right? And let them know, and let, for instance, young men know that it's awesome to be a librarian. This is something that you can do. But in addition to that, look at your website and look at the makeup of your website. Look at what you're attracting and who you're attracting and who's clicking on your website when it comes to employment. And this goes beyond, and Ken, I don't know if you're going to cut me off or not. I'm sorry.
It's getting there.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry. We'll wrap it up here.
I told you I'm a talker, but
well, I tell you, the subject, I see us inviting you back very, very soon to, do more of this discussion, because it certainly warrants more than the time we've been able to allot to it.
Absolutely. And, but one of the things that I will say is, look at your representation. So wherever it is that you are, and this goes for you, Phyllis, and for your organization, and for everyone's organization, look at your representation, and have someone else, have a male, have a person of color, have a person from an LGBTQ community. Look at your visual representation, your website, your Facebook page, and have them to give you feedback, because if I don't see me, right, is this a place for me? If I'm not seeing me in the ways in which your public facing representation, if I don't see people of color, if I don't see men, if I don't see individuals within the LGBTQIA community, or something to indicate to me that we are accepted there, I'm not going to give you the time of day, to be honest. So I hope that answered your questions. I'm open for any other questions. Ken, I know we're running short on time. I want to say thank you so much for inviting me. I definitely look forward to coming back. I will put my email address. I'll put my email address in the chat field in the event that you all, ERE.DEVONA. In the event that you all want to further engage. Okay. Thank you so much.
Be careful of what you ask for, Dr. Pierre, because I know that this is deeply of interest to everyone here today, and we need to spend so much more time engaging on this topic. That we have done you a disservice in some ways by allotting so little time. I appreciate you being here so much today. And we're just going to roll on. Bravo! Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I am going to log out. I'm going to log out, but again, you have my university email contact. And I definitely have, thank you, Sherry. I definitely have contacts in the diversity world if you're looking for a consultant for your organization. So just let me know. Thank you again for having me. Take good care.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thanks. And I think that brings us to Phyllis now for a little group of announcements. Can you unmute yourself, or do I have to do it? How do I do that there?
I'm good, thank you.
All right.
You guys are gonna get sick of me talking. Okay. Hi, everyone. All right, so our announcements coming up. The Scottish American Society has their Haggis Celtic Concerts Real Treble tonight at 7:30 to 10 p.m. The 2020 Biggest Turkey Drive for Dunedin Cares is October 1st through the 15th. And you can bring those food donations Monday through Wednesday or Saturday from 10 to noon. They're looking for all food, but holiday themed dishes are excellent. So if you've got any canned veggies, instant potatoes, jar gravy, frozen turkeys, boxes of stuffing, they will take all of that. You can still sign up for the virtual Lake Tarpon 5K this Sunday, October 18th, presented by the Rotary Club of Dunedin North. We've got ballot drop-off at the Dunedin Public Library, October 19th through November 2nd, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. No drop-off on those Sundays or Election Day. And of course, more information can be found at votepinellas.com. Scottish American Society has a whiskey, wine, and song whiskey tasting, October 24th, 7 p.m. Tickets are $35. All tickets include day membership to the Scottish American Society of Dunedin. Check out the Dunedin Youth Guild website, dunedinyouthguild.org. You can purchase these beautiful handcrafted cards, and there's information about the Tour of Homes, which will be a virtual event this year. Piper on the Pier will start back up every Friday and Saturday starting this evening at the 16th at Dunedin Marina Pier at sunset. The Great Pumpkin Drive-Thru from Dunedin Parks and Recreation is Saturday, October 24th, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. You must register by October 21st. Scary Movie Night, 1922 silent film, The Headless Horseman for the Dunedin History Museum at St. Andrew's Memorial Chapel. They have dates October 27th through 28th and Friday, October 30th. Again, all information is on their website, along with information on their Halloween Hoopla virtual costume contest on Friday, October 30th. It's free, hosted by the Dunedin History Museum. There's time to register for Fall 2 session of art classes beginning November 2nd at the Dunedin Fine Arts Center. More information at www.dfac.org. Drive-in movie night, the House with the Clock in the Walls is Friday, November 20th. Park opens at 6:30 p.m. and the movie begins at dark in Highlander Park. And you need to register for that with Dunedin Parks and Recreation. Despite not having an in-person event, you can still support Ride and Run with the Stars charity through the Sheriff's Christmas Sharing Program. And you can visit that website, rideandrunwiththestars.com, for more information. And it's never too early to start thinking about training for another run, the Kiwanis Midnight Run 2021. Information is available on their website, kiwanismidnightrun.com. They're going to be having a live event on July 3rd, ending after midnight on July 4th. And for those who are not ready to run live in person with us or live outside of Dunedin, there is a virtual component that you can also sign up for. If you've got an event coming up, if you have a live one or a virtual one, and you want it listed in the DCO newsletter, website news, Facebook, and calendar and announced at the meeting, please submit your information to events@dunedincouncil.org. Thank you, everybody. Happy Friday.
Thank you so much, Phyllis. Well, what a great meeting this was, and I only wish we had a little longer to spend on all the topics. It's just an incredible opportunity to get together. However we do, I value all my time with all of you, and look forward to the next go round. So everyone have a fabulous weekend, and go out and be thrilled to be here in Dunedin in our little slice of paradise. So.